as you hear the theme tune slowly fading away into the background, it is time for me to say hello, my spooky friends, and welcome to the Paranormal Tourists. Yes, it's episode 4, and if you missed the previous episode, which was called The Flying Monk versus the Hungry Tiger, I'm sure you can find us on Cotswold Radio's Mixcloud and the repeats and so on. But first, listen to this week's show. Now, if it's your first time listening to the Paranormal Tourist, then let me explain. Each week we give you tales of the supernatural, but more importantly, we talk about places that you can visit, hopefully for free, and also give you details about ghost hunts that you can go on, and spooky things to see and do throughout the Cotswolds, but also further afield. All served up with a healthy dose of folk songs and spooky music to accompany your time as you travel to your destinations. After all, we are the Paranormal Tourists. That's the introduction over and done with, and I need to catch up with some information from a previous week's show, as someone asked me to explain more, and it's to do with the half-term school week this year in 2025, when Halloween falls on the Friday. So it's the week of Halloween, Monday to Friday. That's Friday the 31st of October here at the old prison at Northleach, because we have a week of spooky things to come and see and do. For kids, we have the family-friendly escape rooms all week. We also have a Halloween arts and crafts day that's free. You just turn up. And we have the Scary Bears picnic, where you get to make teddy bears and make Halloween costumes for the bears to wear as well. You even get given a picnic for you whilst you're here. Then on Halloween day itself, so that's Friday the 31st, there is a pumpkin puzzle trick-or-treat event. Wow, that's hard to say. Where there is a puzzle that needs solving all over the museum. So that's the old prison at Northleach. So it's a museum here, as well as a cafe thing, as well as the radio station. And if you solve the puzzle, you'll get a bag of trick-or-treat sweets to take home. Then for adults, we have the more adult escape rooms, as well as Halloween night itself, when we have the Incarcerated Cabaret Halloween Party. The night of cabaret with songs from shows such as Little Shop of Horrors, Jekyll and Hyde, and the Rocky Horror Show, The Addams Family, and just loads more. Sweeney Todd, I think, is in there as well. And all of that, along with the excellent live band Frankenstein's Lobster, who also do the theme tune for this show. Wow, there's so much to get out this week. Then, if you buy the combined ticket, and this is the important thing for paranormal listeners, make sure you get the right ticket, because you get to come along on a ghost hunt until about 2 or 3 in the morning here at the haunted prison with the paranormal tourist team, and join in with all the experiments and all the weirdness that will entail. Wow, got to the end of that. Now, to get more information and buy those tickets for any of those events, and remember, some of them are free, but they might require pre-booking due to limited numbers, then head to the ticket page for the prison. And that is www.stickyproductions.uk/tickets. That's right, Sticky Productions. And look for the event you are after. Oh, a lot of it's in the section that's, it says Haunted Half Term, I think, in that section there. Well, now we got all of that out of the way, I think it's time for some actual spooks. And we are heading to Banbury. And we've tracked down several old rhymes about riding a cock horse to Banbury Cross, all of which ended up in this folk song. Everyone we can find, because there's quite a few sort of variations on that going back hundreds of years, so we put it all into one folk song. And whilst you're listening to Ride a Cock Horse, I will find all my notes on some weirdness from Banbury that you can investigate.
Ride a cock horse to Banbury Cross to see a fine lady upon a white horse. Rings on her fingers and bells on her toes, and she shall have music wherever she goes. The greatest of gifts, the finest of clothes, my lady has music wherever she goes. My lady has music wherever she goes. Ride a cock horse to Banbury Cross to see what Tommy can buy. A penny white loaf, a penny white cake, and a 2-penny big apple pie. Ride a cock horse to Banbury Cross to see a fine lady upon a white horse. Rings on her fingers and bells on her toes, and she shall have music wherever she goes. The greatest of gifts, the finest of clothes, my lady has music wherever she goes. My lady has music wherever she goes. Ride a cock horse to Banbury Cross to see poor Tommy that cries. A cry and a wail, a cry at the tail of horses that live and then die. Ride a cock horse to Banbury Cross to see a fine lady upon a white horse. Rings on her fingers and bells on her toes, and she shall have music wherever she goes. The finest of gifts, the finest of clothes, my lady has music wherever she goes. My lady has music wherever she goes. Ride a cock horse to Banbury Cross, for Tommy is lonely and lost. It trotted behind, it rambled before, but he cannot afford what it costs. Ride a cock horse to Banbury Cross to see a fine lady upon a white horse. Rings on her fingers and bells on her toes, and she shall have music wherever she goes. The greatest of gifts, the finest of clothes, my lady has music wherever she goes. My lady has music wherever she goes. Ride a cock horse to Banbury Cross, but do not waste money or time. Or maybe, of course, you'll sell me your horse, and what was once yours is now mine. The horse that was yours is now mine.
Yes, we know that Banbury is not in the Cotswolds. But as we say, the paranormal tourists go to the Cotswolds and from the Cotswolds to surrounding areas. So Banbury is right on the edge. Therefore, we are going to include it in this week's show. I think we can safely assume our destination is Banbury in Oxfordshire, or more specifically, the Devil's Triangle. Well, we'll explain what that means later. There are a lot of legends in this area, basically, all about the devil. Now, what does the font of all questionable knowledge say about Banbury? Wikipedia, impart us with your dubious knowledge.
Banbury is an historic market town and civil parish on the River Cherwell in Oxfordshire, south-east England. The parish has a population of 54,335 at the 2021 census. Banbury is a significant commercial and retail centre for the surrounding area of North Oxfordshire and southern parts of components of Warwickshire and Northamptonshire, which are predominantly rural. Banbury's main industry are motorsports, car parts, electrical goods, plastics, food processing and printing. Banbury is home to the Jacob Dow Egberts factory, which was previously the world's largest coffee producing facility, built in 1964. The town is famed for Banbury cakes, a spiced sweet pastry.
Well, thank you, Tony, for reading that rather boring factual piece for us. Let us take a journey from A to B. The A being Adderbury and the B being Banbury or Bloxham. Or if we wish to make a massive hike of it, it's about 10 miles to walk from one to the next, then back to your car. We did this trip a few years ago with 2 cars. Now, we parked in Banbury, then got into the other car and drove to Bloxham, then walked from Bloxham to Adderbury, then Adderbury to Banbury, a distance of about 6.5 miles on a lovely September day, and we had a great day taking in some spooky sights. Now, you can do it the other way around, Adderbury to Bloxham, Bloxham to Adderbury, do it whichever way around you so desire. but I'll sort of talk about them in whichever order you work it out yourselves. And we're going to take you on a quick tour. Now, we started in St Mary's in Bloxham. There are 3 churches that were built by 3 brothers. However, it's thought that these churches were actually helped out by at least one of the brothers getting his mate Satan to give him a hand. Now, that well-known builder of churches, the devil himself, yes, he's very well known for this kind of behaviour. No idea how this one turned into a local legend, and I'm pretty sure building churches is not exactly on brand for old Nicky, but apparently he was a useful builder and helped build the churches in Bloxham, Adderbury, and the one we're not going to visit today, which is King's Sutton. And the only reason we're not visiting it is we couldn't actually walk that far. The main reason for the legend seems to have come about that one of these brothers paid for the churches, not an uncommon practice years ago, but one of the workers that helped on the project apparently never slept, never ate, never took any pay, and as soon as the last stone was laid, he disappeared. And some legends say leaving behind a slight smell of sulphur, never to be seen again. Now, either this was the devil deciding to branch out into building work, or it could be that the worker never got paid after working himself to death and someone buried the body and didn't tell anyone. Or twins, maybe. One doing a day shift and one doing the night shift, therefore did lots of work, who accidentally overlapped shifts one day, built 2 sides of the same wall, accidentally walling themselves in. I know that's insane, but this is the story of a devil building a church. Now, come on. Or perhaps it was a worker that was extremely hard-working, got embarrassed easily, and as he was about to be paid, he farted, left a slight smell of sulphur, and was so embarrassed, ran away and never came back again. Any of these are more plausible than the devil being there. Anyway, apparently this worker did possibly get tired, as he slipped one day whilst carrying mortar, and there was so much of it that it solidified and apparently turned into Crouch Hill. There seems to be a lot of devil stories in this area, along with witch burnings and devil dogs or alien big cat sightings. I would start your walk at Adderbury Church and try and find the satanic-looking pentagram on the building, because it could take you a while, which in reality is probably where the devil rumours came from. There's a 5-pointed pentagram with 2 points at the top, which is often used as a demonic symbol. Now, it's not unusual to find some quite weird and wonderful carvings and decorating the exterior of English churches, with stonemasons often showing off, and in some cases one can only assume that it would have taken some considerable audacity to justify the use of some of their more risque pieces, so it's always fun looking at carvings, and particularly the sort of gargoyles and the grotesques. Now, there's lots of things like mooning men. You often see lots of bottoms pointing at you if you look up. I'm not saying there are at this one. That might just be a man hanging his bottom over the side of a church. But there's several, like you get the green man, so there's a face which is made out of leaves or looking like through trees, or the Sheila Nagig. We'll talk about that. It's a pagan thing. I'll talk about that in a later show. But you can find a lot of these things, and people often make the mistake of saying, oh, they've got lots of gargoyles. Now, gargoyles are the ones that sort of squirt water everywhere, and there are the ones that are just carvings. Now, the carvings are grotesques, not gargoyles. I hope that makes sense. You can now be pedantic and annoy people at dinner parties. Also, keep your eyes open whilst we're here, because there's other spookies as well, right? Adderbury Church has its fair share of these exterior carvings. So the pentagram is accompanied by numerous grinning demons, griffins, a mermaid with 2 tails, quite similar to the Starbucks logo. There's a serpent, I think, with 2 heads. There's another serpent with 1 head but 2 bodies. Reminds me of the Blackadder thing, where he says he saw a cow with 2 heads, 2 bodies and 8 legs. Obviously 2 cows. And an entire band. There's a band including a piper, a drummer and a hurdy-gurdy player. I got to keep quiet about that one. Tom is desperate to buy a hurdy-gurdy, so I don't know if that's what influenced him. So go and take a look at this lovely old church in Adderbury, but keep your eyes open, as I said, for the ghost of George Cobb, as this one has been seen relatively recently in the last few years on Sir George's Lane. It's claimed that people have seen the funeral procession of Sir George reenacting its final journey to the church. Some people claiming that this is due to his pre-death instructions that were ignored. So he said there were 4 oaks on his land that should never be felled. So obviously they were, and his ghost has returned because of this. A certain Anthony Burgess lived round here, and his house was reportedly haunted, and that included poltergeist activity. Now, we won't be able to get into his house, so I won't be precise as to where it is. However, he also claimed to have seen a ghost in the Red Lion pub. This time, it was a misty figure, apparently in striped pyjamas. That's all I can find about that ghost. No, so good luck. Try and get some more info for that one and send it to us. Now head into the pub and ask if they've got any more spirits to offer. You can end up walking if you started off at Bloxham and ended up in Attenbury, or you can end up from Attenbury to Bloxham doing about a 3.5 mile walk. So make sure you've either stock up on a few drinks or you've just sat down and had a few drinks. What do you got here? If you could walk about 60 miles an hour, you could probably get from one to the other in the space of it takes you to play this song. Or you put it on loop many, many times. Anyway, it's the story of a devil building the churches in Crouch Hill. So on your marks, are we ready? On your marks, get set, go!
Hill's peak, the devil stood, as said, I'll stay within these woods. 3 churches rose from stone and clay, by night's cruel hand, not light of day, to hear the word that he did say. The devil on that fateful day. 3 churches stand a devil's task. What was the point, I hear you ask? Crouch Hill whispers of his will. The devil laughs atop the hill. His secrets he will never spill. He struck the earth, his grin was wide. With every blow the hill complied. A spire for sin, a tower for lies. A chapel mourns the blood-red skies. And here's the word that he did say. The devil on that fateful day. Why build for faith when faith he breaks? The devil smiles, the ground it shakes. 3 churches stand a devil's task. What was the point, I hear you ask? Crouch Hill whispers of his will. The devil laughs atop the hill. His secrets he will never spill. Did he tire of fire and flames, crave stone and prayer and holy name, or mock the faithful gathered there and find the souls he should prepare? Well, here's the word that he did say. The devil on that fateful day. Why build for faith when faith he breaks? The devil smiles, the ground it shakes. 3 churches stand a devil's task. What was the point, I hear you ask? Crouch Hill whispers of his will. The devil laughs atop the hill. His secrets he will never spill.
Now, I've no idea whether you're in Bloxham or in Adderbury after running at 60 miles an hour to get from one to the other, so I'm going to tell you a story from Bloxham Online's website. It's a very simple little website there telling you about Bloxham, but somebody wrote this particular story on it, and I'm going to get somebody else to read it.
It all began in July 1966. My aunt had been in hospital to have an operation, and after she'd been discharged and went back to her home in Bloxham, she would not go upstairs to bed because her brother had died in the house some years before. So she slept in the front room, and after being home for about 8 weeks, she died very suddenly one lunchtime. 2 months afterwards, her sister died, also very suddenly. At the time, I was a young mother with 3 children. My son was only a year old, and we lived in a row of cottages outside the village. And the first presence of a ghost that I felt was in my bedroom at this cottage. I had a feeling that there was someone watching me in the room, and as I walked along the bottom of the bed, the air became very cold, although it was a nice sunny day. I believed that it was my mother watching over her grandson. In 1970, my husband and myself were watching a program on TV with the children before they went to bed, when we heard a loud bang in the bathroom. No one moved. I said it must have been Sandy the cat, so I went upstairs and opened the bathroom door. No Sandy. But I couldn't believe what I saw. Everything was on the floor. Things off the windowsill, the linen basket was upside down, but nothing was broken and there was nobody there. My friendly ghost still lives in the house after 40 years and is still in the bathroom. The cold water tap stops working every so often and there's no water, and it can last for days or even longer. Then after a while the cold tap starts working and we have running water again. Sometimes when we're sitting down reading the paper, there is a loud bang, and on going to investigate out in the hallway, we find there's a picture or a plate that's fallen off the wall and lying on the stairs. They're never broken. The cottage was built many years ago in what was known as the Donkey Field, and the lane leading to this field was called Dark Lane. The cottages were built on the side of this field.
Now, the main reason I wanted to actually put that story in there is because it talks about a thing with poltergeists. Poltergeist activity will move things about, make things fall off walls and so on. I think a lot of people know what poltergeists are, but what people don't necessarily know is the level of the noise that these poltergeists makes. Now, you heard there, this person said there were loud bangs. Now, quite often, very small objects will have moved, but the noise that it makes is huge. You'll get a really loud bang sound when you go outside and there's something quite small. And it's almost the opposite. The smaller the object is, the louder the noise it makes. It's very, very weird experience. I've been in a few investigations where we've heard loud banging noises gone somewhere and there's a little ball on the floor or there is a cup has fallen over. It's that kind of thing. Whereas the bigger the object, the quieter the noise, and it's completely disproportional to the actual object itself. So if you're ever in a poltergeist place and you hear these loud noises, don't walk into a room thinking, oh, there's nothing here. Keep a good lookout and look for the smaller objects that have moved or are in places that they shouldn't be. Now, back to Bloxham. Now, the main reason that we walked through Bloxham, however, was to see the Devil's Church. So make sure you take a look at that one as well. And you could, if you've gone Adderbury to Bloxham, you could then carry on walking to King Sutton if you wanted, or head north to Banbury. Now, please keep your eyes open for alien big cats, as there's many sightings of leopard-like creatures wandering around these fields and woodlands. The wild cats wandering around the UK are lethal. You know, these are wild, big, scary things with big pointy teeth. However, they do tend to keep themselves to themselves, and attacks on humans are extremely rare. They have happened, but they're extremely rare because there's such an abundance of food for these cats. So they prefer to attack sheep and deer. And the few attacks that have been authenticated as real have been when a person scares them and the cat is just warning them to get away. Now, we ended up, when we got to Banbury, in the museum. an hour or so before it closed, and it is a free venue, so please check the websites before you go there, just to check it is actually going to be open, and that's www.banburymuseum.org. Now, they do have some arts and crafts events going on this Halloween. However, you don't want to go to those, as you want to come to the ones here at the Old Prison at Northleach, which you can check out. I've mentioned it many, many times on the show. Check out at Sticky Productions website and go to their ticket page for the Haunted Half-Term section. Now, there's several haunted places in Banbury, and ones we've talked about before on our podcast show, which you can go on Spotify and listen to if you want, include a shop on White Lion Walk that is rather annoying, as it's been known to lock people in the toilet, refusing to open the door, and rather worrying is the smell of burning toast. You can smell this one out in the street. So technically, one that you can investigate, but I say worryingly because that's also a symptom of having a stroke when you smell toast. So genuinely worrying, that one. The spook is also a poltergeist, and it has been known to knock things over like files and books from shelves. And another building we've talked about was on Middleton Road. A couple living in a Victorian property was subjected to several months of phantom activity with poltergeists and noises. One of those noises being footsteps, which were heard in a room where one witness was sitting. A room was ransacked by an invisible entity, and a solid wood trap door to the attic raised itself 45 degrees for several minutes. And now, this house was finally blessed and the occupiers moved out, not wanting to find out whether the blessing was successful, which also means we don't know if it was. Now, I was in investigations in Gloucester. There was a little, very, very old house in Gloucester where they had a similar thing with an attic hatch that would open and close itself, which we later worked out was basically a breeze and a hole in the roof that was causing this hatch to go up and down. But that was only sort of a couple of degrees or so. The one on Middleton Road, they're talking about this thing pretty much sort of opening halfway and then closing back down again. Whenever anyone gives an explanation saying, oh, it was probably this, that, and the other, it was the wind, or it was this, it's highly insulting to the person who witnessed it, because you kind of go, well, did you not think I thought of that first? And that's kind of the mindset I had until I went on an investigation. This person was telling us all about the fact that this ghost opens and closes their attic, and when we saw it, it was like about a centimetre, and it was the wind. So, and I'm hoping they're not listening to this show after I've just insulted their ghost. Now, the most important thing when ghost hunting, or when going for a long walk through the countryside, is finding a pub to finish up in. The Jolly Weavers pub in Banbury is named after the fact that there's lots of weavers in the vicinity, and the area was known for it. So I guess it's a pub where the weavers had a few drinks and got jolly. It's reputed to be haunted, and the pub dates back to the 18th century, according to the owners there. There have been poltergeist activities, as well as the feeling of some strange presence in the building, which is often accompanied by strange noises. Now, they've called the ghost Dave, because everybody knows a Dave, and they claim that he is a previous customer who never left. Built in the late 1700s, it's full of history, as are all old pubs. I do love the fact when we get American tourists over here, and they talk about their historic building they live in that's built in 1906 or something. And you go, oh, right, okay, that's the youngest building if it was here in this village. But we have buildings here that are hundreds and hundreds of years old, so it's hardly surprising we are the centre of spookiness. So this one was built in the late 1700s, and staff throughout the years have reported apports, disappearances, poltergeist activities, and unusual banging and knocking noises, as well as seeing figures that shouldn't be there. Now, I said apports there in a weird way. The reason being some people don't know what they are. Now, an apport is where a thing just appears from nowhere, often accompanied by a loud noise as well, and sort of something appearing in front of you and just falling down onto the floor. I have witnessed a few of these in my life. They are amazing when they happen. Now, the bar area of this pub claims to have the ghost of Dave, amongst others, and it's been experienced during the day and when customers are around. So you can investigate this place just by going for a drink if you wish. ghostly, shadowy figures have been seen in the bar, and I have been shown some footage pertaining to claims of this. They were interesting little snippets. However, it's very difficult for us to watch something and say, yes, that's a ghost, as we can't possibly comment if we weren't there. And it's easy to fake things nowadays with computers. But as I said, I have seen some very good footage of shadow figures in the bar. It also seems as though Dave may have been a smoker, as ghost hunters have claimed to have heard the apparition cough whilst they're stood there. So sit yourselves down, have a drink, and have a strange ghost cough at you. If you are doing some form of marathon ghost walk, we're not far from Edge Hill. Now, Edge Hill is one of the most famous Civil War ghosts and hauntings, and anyone who's read any book on ghosts will probably have read this one. And most ghost hunters, certainly my age, would have come to ghost hunting firstly through the Usborne Book of Spooky Stuff, Usborne Book of Ghosts. There was one about UFOs as well and strange things, and Ghostbusters in 1984. Every ghost hunter I ever speak to has got that book and watched that film. And there are a lot of books about ghosts where it'll tell you this ghost happens here, this ghost happens here, this ghost happens here, etc. And Edge Hill is one of those famous ones. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this one. So I'm going to play the Edge Hill fight song, which is based on lyrics by Kipling. And hopefully by the end of it I would have found all my notes so we can talk about Edge Hill.
Naked and grey the Cotswolds stand beneath the autumn sun, and the stubble fields on either hand where Stour and Avon run. There is no change in the patient land that has bred us everyone, that has bred us everyone. She should have passed in cloud and fire and saved us from this sin of war, red war twixt child and sire, household and kith and kin. In the heart of a sleepy Midland shire, with the harvest scarcely in, with the harvest scarcely in. Two brothers born, two brothers fought. We never learn what history taught. But there is no change as we meet at last on the browhead or the plain, and the raw astonished ranks stand fast to slay or to be slain by the men they knew in the kindly past, that shall never come again, that shall never come again. By the men they met at dance or chase, in the tavern or the hall, at the justice bench and the marketplace, at the cudgel play or brawl, of their own blood and speech and race. Comrades or neighbours all, comrades or neighbours all. Two brothers born, two brothers fought. We never learn what history taught. More bitter than death this day must prove, whichever way it go, for the brothers of the maids we love make ready to lay low their sister sweethearts as we move against our dearest foe, against our dearest foe. Thank heaven at last the trumpets peal, before our strength gives way, for king or for the commonwealth, no matter which they say. The first dry rattle of new drawn steel changes the world today, change the world today. Two brothers born, two brothers fought, we never learn what history taught. Two brothers born, two brothers fought, we never learn what history taught.
So what are the spooks of Edge Hill, I hear you ask? Well, that poem was by Kipling, and it's about people fighting on different sides of the Civil War, a soon-to-be-experienced phenomena in the USA by the looks of it. For those of you who don't know about the English Civil War, we had the Roundheads, which were the side that were more Puritan, and they were fighting for democracy, and the Royalists, who wanted to have their fascist dictatorship, mostly because they were extremely rich and liked the fact that these super rich people controlled all the laws and had all the power. They'd convinced the population that the leader was ordained by God, and any God-fearing Christian should support this fascist right-wing policies of having a... Now, wait a minute. Am I reading about the Civil War? No, I think I've gone onto Wiki again and currently reading about US policy. Anyway, history repeats itself, folks. And to paraphrase the words and a well-known quote, the only thing we learn from history is that we never learn from history. In years to come, we may end up with a lot more hauntings from this new US Civil War that's about to happen. However, what is important for the next 5 minutes is the English Civil War, which was King Charles I against the parliamentary forces, which, if you don't know, were called Roundheads, partly due to their battle helmets and hairstyles.
The first major action of the English Civil War was a brutal battle, a fierce fight that left thousands dead and wounded and left us with the largest multiple witness ghost spottings ever in the UK. The Battle of Edge Hill took place on the 23rd of October 1642, when the parliamentary army of the Earl of Essex clashed with the royalist army of King Charles I on fields between the villages of Radway and Kinnerton. The combined forces of the Cavalier and Roundhead armies totaled over 25,000 men, plus cavalry and artillery, and the countryside provided cover for musketeers on both sides hidden in hedgerows. For 3 hours the battle was hard fought and bloody, but the troops were inexperienced and panicked, and the losses were significant. Whilst the parliamentarians were forced to retreat, the royalists weren't able to make it to London as they had wanted, so historically Edge Hill has been viewed as a stalemate battle, or a draw if you will. This inconclusive battle left a landscape littered with the dead and dying, or lying where they fell. 2 months later, in late December 1642, some travellers and local herdsmen heard the beating of drums and the distant noise of soldiers. This was then accompanied by a dazzlingly bright light appearing in the sky, and the armies which had fought one another a few weeks earlier materialized in phantom form overhead, reenacting the terrible battle, not on the ground, but above it and in the sky. The neighing of horses, the shouted commands, the clattering of arms, and the horrible screams and groans of the dying rang out clearly across the battlefields. These poor men were too scared to run away, and frozen with fear, they watched the whole scene unfold before their very eyes. Only once the figures in the sky faded did they alert anyone, and the next night others were apparently to witness the same scene. This continued off and on for several nights, with many of the local residents witnessing this scene. King Charles, who was in Oxford at the time, heard about this fearful sight and sent 6 of his trusted officers to investigate. They didn't have to wait long to experience the manifestations themselves. These men, a colonel, 2 captains, and 3 other gentlemen of worth, saw the ghostly reenactment. They saw the faces of people that they had known, including Sir Edmund Verney, the king's standard-bearer. Sir Edmund had been captured during the battle and told he would be allowed to live if he surrendered the royal banner. He refused to let it go. According to legend, his hand was later found still grasping the standard, but his body was never recovered. Having heard these reports, on oath the king was advised that the restless spirits could be the results of the unburied casualties, as the bodies were still strewn around the battlefield, and a search was made, and a pamphlet published in 1643 titled The New Year's Wonder records that some bodies were discovered and given a proper burial. A pamphlet was published in 1643 entitled The New Year's Wonder, and records show that some bodies were discovered and given a proper burial in the hope that this would stop this sad and hideous sight. It worked partly as the visual aspect is a lot less common nowadays and has faded with time, with sightings being rare. However, the sounds of the battle are a more common occurrence these days. There is, however, the ghost of a large white horse, which is more regularly sighted. Some say that this is the ghost of Henry Kingsmill's loyal horse. Kingsmill was a parliamentarian killed by a cannonball at Edge Hill, and his mother later built a memorial to him in Radway Church, where even after 380 years, a small bunch of flowers is often placed on the anniversary of the battle. In 1947, a local newspaper reported that a local policeman would often see this ghost horse when he was on night patrol, and that the apparition was the steed of Prince Rupert, the royalist cavalry commander. The paper maintained that the spirited spectre, foaming at the mouth, was persistently seen by soldiers stationed in the area, leaving many of them scared. Sir Edmund Verney is said to return to the spot where he was killed, clasping the royal standard. Perhaps he is still searching for his severed hand. There was an old barn where a wounded royalist soldier had sought refuge and was rumoured to run fresh with blood every 23rd of October, as was Red Road, an old bridleway where it said you could still hear the footsteps of wounded soldiers fleeing the battle site. There was a bridge at Thistle Farm between Radway and Kinnerton which cattle refused to cross after dusk, and reports of a shadowy horseman who would charge through hedges and streams silently and without leaving a mark or making so much as a ripple. More than anything else, though, people still hear the terrible sounds of the battlefield. They hear the clashing of steel, thundering hooves, anguished cries, and even, apparently, whispered prayers.
If visiting the site, you will notice you cannot access it all, so get as close as it is possible to get, due to much of the area being the very off-limits defence munitions. It's now the largest ammunition depot in Western Europe. You can, however, walk down the Red Road, no longer stained with the victims of war, and stop at the Edge Hill Memorial to try and experience the hauntings for yourself. Oh, and so thank you very much for our acting colleagues for reading those out for us. They definitely got spookier voices than I do. Right, well, this is technically a calendar ghost, as it's supposed to haunt on the anniversary of the battles. However, in all my research, I've never found any sightings that actually relate to that date, or on that specific date, and a a lot of them happen around that time. Sightings seem to happen more in autumn and winter, and it's thought that rather than the dates triggering the rerun of the events, it's more likely that the weather conditions were similar. And I'm running out of time on this show to go too much into that, but believe me, I will in depth in a later show, I am sure, as the ooh shiny genes in me get very distracted very easily, and I'll probably go off on a 10-minute lecture about how weather conditions affect spookies. Now, I'm going to find a Cotswold folk song to take us to the next tale, as we're heading back into the Cotswolds, this time in Oldsworth and Lodge Park. As anyone listening long-term to this show knows, I am a musician and I write songs, but also theatrical works. And we were doing a show in Gloucester at the Guildhall, all about World War One. We did a big investigation whilst we were there as well, and I'm sure we're going to talk about Gloucester spooks, because on the cotswold.com website, it classes Gloucester as Cotswolds. So we will do a big show on Gloucester at one point. Anyway, this show was talking about World War One and the links to Gloucestershire, and it featured a well-known poet, Ivor Gurney. And we did a load of songs and with words or by him, or that were inspired by him. And here's one of those songs that actually got cut from the show. It didn't have many words by him, but it's got a few. So it's slightly less folky and more stage musical, and contains several lines by the Cotswold wordsmith. But thought it could find a good home here on this Cotswold-based ghost show. So we got a song here about soldiers in Gloucestershire, and the fact that there were a lot of Roman soldiers in Gloucestershire, and that Gloucester had a lot of links with Roman soldiers as well. And the show sort of talked about warfare throughout time. I've got to give you all that backstory, otherwise this song doesn't make a huge amount of sense. So, on Cotswold Edge, I think this one was called.
On Cotswold Edge there is a field that's growing thick with corn, and thistles of the tallest kind, where Romans once were born. Historic soldier given land, a farm with pigs and fowl, and in between new battle scars he waits and farms a while. The farmer plows up coins of old in the sodden earth so damp and cold. He holds them in his aching hand to people lost in time and land. So run through furrows, woods and trees, the watchful soul tells what he sees. And Roman soldiers saw this land the farmer now holds in his hand. Digs up shards of broken pot as soldiers now are lost and shot. The farmers live through war and peace, for soldiers need the meat and fleece. The single kite is hovering still by the trees or on the hill, and soldiers need to eat their fill. The farmers live, the soldiers kill. When all is done and all is said, the field run red with freshly dead. The land lives on when others don't. Wars will end but killing won't. When all is done and all is said, the field run red with freshly dead. The land lives on when others don't. Wars will end but killing won't.
Now, I'm going to keep us on track with the English Civil War, and I'm going to take us back to a place we've been to before, and that's Prestbury, near Cheltenham. And I was sent a story about the Cavalier ghosts and round here ghosts that appear in this area. Gloucestershire was very, very important. I just need to give you a bit of backstory on the English Civil War here. It was extremely important because in Gloucester, we had Colonel Massey, who kept hold of Gloucester for the parliamentarians, and if they had lost Gloucester, which was the only port they really had on this side of the country, it's likely the royalists may have actually won, and we would have returned to King Charles ruling, and Cromwell would have lost, and so on. There were lots of messages going backwards and forwards, and we have the story of a ghost going through Prestbury, going down the Burgage, where a rope was stretched across the road. It knocked the guy off the horse, or decapitated him in some stories. Another one where he was shot off the horse with an arrow. Anyway, the story is that you can hear those hooves going down the road and galloping along, but one person said that their father used to be a policeman. They had a speaker system on their car and a microphone, and they would go round the corner and tap on the microphone to sound like horses and pretend to be the ghost. That, to me, doesn't actually ring true, because the stories that I've heard go way back before police cars had these speakers on them, and there's hundreds of years of this actual spook being heard. There's hundreds of sightings, and it seems to me as though somebody's dad possibly made up a story about them doing it, and they may have done it once or twice, and that then accounts for all the stories. That's just as unbelievable as the actual ghost stories themselves sometimes. So I'm sorry, the story that I got sent about the person's dad faking all the ghost sightings on the Burgage in Prestbury doesn't really ring true. I'm sure they did fake some of them, but there are hundreds and hundreds of years of this actual phenomenon. And if you are in Prestbury, then have a look. Go and sit outside at the Burgage, and you can also find an episode of a TV show I did with Michaela Strachan called Great British Ghosts, where we are sat outside a pub and talking about ghosts that have been seen in Prestbury. You can find that on YouTube, so go and take a look at that. Before then, however, I have an update on another spook in Prestbury. I got sent a story about the stick lady. Now, if you've listened to our shows before, you might know about the stick lady. A woman is seen walking down the street picking up sticks for, I assume, what would have been a fire when they were alive. The story I've been sent is, well, they didn't want to actually put their name out, so I won't say who, but they were walking down the street, saw a woman that was bent over picking up sticks, and they walked past. It wasn't until they walked past they realised that looked a bit strange, and then turned around, saw this figure had gone, just completely disappeared out of the street. So, was rather freaked out because they walked back to where they thought it was, only about sort of 10 yards away, and there was nowhere for that woman. It was an older woman, and there was no way that she could have run off. There was nowhere for her to go. And it wasn't until they'd heard one of our episodes about Prestbury that she realised that there was a possibility it might have been a ghost. It's the kind of thing I get asked all the time where people say, oh, you believe in ghosts, I don't believe in them because I've never seen one. Well, how do you know you've never seen one? If that person hadn't turned back round thinking that looked a bit strange, then they would not have realised it was a ghost because it completely disappeared. You could have seen hundreds of ghosts in your time and not known. There could be one sat next to you right now. We're going to get another song here, crammed in towards the end, about the stick lady of Prestbury.
She floats through the fog in the dead of night, her face a whisper in the pale street light. A bag of twigs hangs at her side. You hear her steps but cannot hide. She's a ghost in the dark, a spark in the gloom, building a fire in a freezing room. Ashes and echoes, they keep her warm, warming the night from the breaking storm. Picks up a branch from the cracked old curb, humming a tune that nobody's heard. The shade of a shape of a soul left behind,